It's hard to overstate the cultural impact stock car racing has made across the state of North Carolina. What is now the largest racing series in America evolved from these windy, mountainous roads. So much of North Carolina racing history is still alive today. Let's explore the Moonshine and Motorsports Trail.
Welcome to Okonichi Speedway in Hillsborough, North Carolina, just outside of Durham. We are standing roughly where the start-finish line would have been in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s. Look at the flag stand. 1948 to 1968, Okonichi Speedway, otherwise known as Hillsborough or Orange Speedway. In fact, you've got Orange Speedway written right there. We are standing on one of NASCAR's earliest racetracks. In 1949, NASCAR had just become a thing, just become legit, a real functioning, operating racing series. Okonichi Speedway was the third race of that season. That first race was won by Bob Flock, fitting because we are on the Moonshine and Motorsports Trail, and the Flock family, they were big in the moonshine business back in the day. Bob Flock specifically, there's a story of revenuers waiting for him in Atlanta and chasing him around the racetrack multiple times before eventually he broke through a fence and, they continued their chase on real roads. This track did host an early NASCAR modified race in 1948, but its first strictly stock event was in 1949. Reports estimate that 17,000 fans filled these concrete grandstands, and I imagine some of the accompanying hillsides, to see that first NASCAR strictly stock event in 1949, the one that was won by Bob Flock. As you can see, these grandstands are still here, more than 70 years later. Now, Okonichi Speedway is Okonichi Speedway Trail, which is simply that. It's now a walking trail that anyone can stop by and enjoy. And we are going to do just that. Back in its heyday, this track was billed as a 1-mile dirt oval. Technically, the distance got shortened at some point to just under 1 mile, but no one ever really seemed to acknowledge that. It was a 1-mile oval. If you look at this track from above, you'll see it almost looks like a larger Martinsville. Very long straightaways, which made it unique and kind of popular amongst drivers. Unlike many other short tracks around North Carolina, you could really open that thing up, step on the gas, reach some very high, very dangerous speeds. We're walking through turns 1 and 2 right now, and yes, this track was very narrow. They didn't have walls. They certainly didn't have safer barriers, so if you went out of the groove, no pun intended, you really had to hope that these hills or maybe some trees caught you before things got really ugly. Now, this track was featured on Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s Lost Speedways on Peacock. Also, my YouTube buddy Slapshoes did a video here a few years ago. We're exiting turn 2, heading now down the back straightaway. This track originally was a horse racing track. The way the story goes, Bill France, before NASCAR was a thing yet, flew over this facility in an airplane, saw all the land, saw the potential. He was able to acquire the speedway, and then he expanded it, made it bigger so it would fit his stock car racing vision better. And bada bing, bada boom. That's how Okonichi Speedway became one of NASCAR's first racetracks. I think it's crazy that just outside the track, behind the back straightaway, there's just a river. Can you see that? Just a river lurking right here. Man, you did not want to get squirrely going into turn 3. We're in the middle of turns 3 and 4 right now. Look at how many trees so close to the racing surface. It's a pretty cloudy day anyways, but I imagine you come out here even when it's sunny, these things cast some nice shadow, some nice shade. This has to be a very nice walking trail no matter what time of year you come visit. Ooh, and now it's starting to sprinkle slightly. It's an overcast day, unfortunately. The weather's been so good this week. Gonna have to try and find cover. We're gonna try and set a new lap record. Screaming towards the finish line. They're beating, they're banging. The crowd is on their feet. Woo! I just break the track record. I only ran like maybe a quarter mile at best. And full transparency, it's barely sprinkling out here. It's truly crazy to think about the greats from the early days of NASCAR, the folks who built stock car racing in America, how many of them stood, raced, right here, right where I'm basically standing in the way. Richard Petty won here 3 times. Lee Petty won here 3 times. Buck Baker won here 3 times. Richard Petty won the final NASCAR race here in 1968. That's right, this track only lasted just over 20 years. Unfortunately, not all locals were thrilled with races being held on Sunday. They began to pressure the local government, and ultimately NASCAR left town. Bill France had an impressive new racetrack down in Talladega, Alabama, that NASCAR wound up going to instead. Now, I'm not sure how long Okonichi Speedway or Orange Speedway would have lasted regardless. It was unique for sure, but from what I could tell, purse money wasn't always the best. There are other tracks like North Wilkesboro, Raleigh, Charlotte. There are a lot of tracks in North Carolina. It was a competitive area. But she made it 20 years. One of NASCAR's founding racetracks, the greats of the sport, the earliest legends, cut their teeth in between these trees, between these hills. It's so great that so many remnants from this racetrack still stand here, are still enjoyed by people today. The community now very much supports this racetrack. I was talking to someone yesterday who lives nearby who said when Dale Jr., Richard Petty were out here filming that episode of Lost Speedways, it was the talk of the town. Everyone was hush hush murmuring about it, trying to catch a glimpse of the King and Dale Earnhardt Jr. This has to be one of my favorite stops so far. Can you just imagine being a fan here in the 50s, sitting in these grandstands, watching these cars scream by on this old dirt surface? I guess the dirt surface wasn't as old back then. Well, I guess dirt's just always old, right? Isn't that the point of dirt? It's old. I don't know what I'm talking about. One thing I didn't show you is this box. I think this would have been like where the officials, the scorers, likely would have sat to observe the race. Good view of the start finish line. I love the old Pepsi signage. You'll see this in a lot of the buildings nearby. Old Pepsi logos, still very much intact. I don't know what has or hasn't been touched up perhaps or refurbished a little bit. But either way, I think the message is still being delivered. This is what Okonichi Speedway would have looked like back in at least the 60s. I was just thinking about other tracks that are nearby. I forgot we're not that far from Martinsville Speedway either, which was also one of NASCAR's earliest racetracks. It too was a dirt track in its first few years. Oop, just got a little flash of lightning and some thunder, so I think that's our cue to start to head out. That's got to be one of my favorite stops on the Moonshine and Motorsports Trail so far. Just kind of tucked away here in Hillsborough, North Carolina, Orange County. I hope the weather holds up before our next stop. Although to get to our next stop, we've got to drive a ways, like 2+ hour. Oh, big lightning strike. Like 2+ hour a ways. Let's go. Still a little blue sky peeking through those gray clouds, but we've made it to Stone Mountain State Park here in North Carolina. Wilkes County, North Carolina, to be more specific. I had to drive on some pretty sketchy, narrow, windy, hilly roads to get over here. The kinds of roads that would have played to Moonshine runners' strengths back in the day. Because one, bootleggers were already risk takers. They were bold, brave, daring. But two, because they were also known to outfit their cars, trick them out to handle these types of conditions, these roads, better than the police cars were at the time. You might have heard some water rushing in the background. Well, here we are. It looks like we're at the top of a pretty steep waterfall here. The ground is very slanted. It's nice of them to put a fence here because, I don't know, I'm so clumsy and top heavy, I'd probably go tumbling right over if I wasn't careful. Oh, hey there, buddy. What's up? Hi. Yeah, how's it going? Oh my gosh. I thought it was a coyote at first. Hey. Oh, wow. That is beautiful. Long way down. Holy moly. I'm heading down to the base of the falls. Nice of them to put these stairs here. They look pretty awesome, woven between the trees. Although my guess is it won't be very much fun coming back up these things. Oh, wow. We made it to the bottom. That is steep. I don't know if the camera's doing it justice. That's got to be at least a 45-degree angle, if not a little steeper. So cool, beautiful. Pretty short hike too, a little less than half a mile to get out here. Only way out of here is to take the stairs, oh boy. Whew, that wasn't so bad. Now you may be wondering why this park is called Stone Mountain State Park. Well, it may have something to do with the 600-foot granite dome that you can see kind of through the trees right there. It'd be another couple miles to hike to the top and then back as well. If I had the time and there wasn't a severe threat of thunderstorms in the next hour, I would absolutely go check it out. But I think the waterfall there was a pretty neat consolation prize. I neglected to mention that Moonshine was also manufactured in these hills.
Over the years, approximately 200 moonshine stills have been found in these hills, many of them still intact. Many of y'all know the NASCAR legend Junior Johnson was born and raised in nearby Wilkesboro, North Carolina. He was a successful team owner. He won 50 cup races as a driver, but his roots, as well as his family's roots, trace back to these hills in Wilkes County. Running moonshine, working in the family business. We actually learned at the NASCAR Hall of Fame earlier on this trip that Junior Johnson's father was actually part of the biggest moonshine bust on record in the state of North Carolina. We just crossed back over into the Wilkes County half of the park because actually Stone Mountain State Park crosses 2 different counties, but now we're in the famous, amongst race fans at least, famous Wilkes County. This may not be a racetrack, but it's still a very important stretch of road to the beginnings of NASCAR, stock car racing as we know it today. Legends like Junior Johnson, the Flock brothers. Many began running moonshine because they had to make money, to make a living. Then they started racing against one another because they wanted to. I also love reading and hearing about the tricks drivers would use. They would legit throw down oil slick to mess up the police. They'd toss nails and pieces of metal out behind them to blow their tires, like Mario Kart stuff. Some good reflection on the history of moonshine and motorsports, and also some good exercise today. Thank you all for joining me on this adventure. Next stop is North Wilkesboro Speedway. NASCAR is back.